My name Andrew Goodman, interviewed in Dallas, Texas. I'm 97 years old. I was born in slavery, and I think them days was better for the niggers than the days we see now. One thing was, I never was cold and hungry where my master lived, and I has been plenty hungry and cold a lot of times since he is gone. But sometimes I think Marse Goodman was the bestest man God made in a long time. My mother, Martha Goodman, belonged to Marse Bob Goodman when she was born, but my pa come from Tennessee, and Marse Bob heired him from some of his kinfolks who died over there. The Goodmans must have been fine folks all around, 'cause my pa said them was raised him was good to they niggers. Old Marse never allowed none of his nigger family separated. He thought it was right and fitting that folks stay together, though I heard tell of some that didn't think so. My missus was just as good as Marse Bob. My ma was a puny little woman that wasn't able to do work in the fields, and she puttered round the house for missus, doing little odd jobs. I played round with Miss Sally and little Mr. Bob, and I ate with them and slept with them. I used to sweep off the steps and do things, and she'd brag on me. Many is the time I'd get to nodding and go to sleep, and she'd pick me up and put me in bed with her children. Marse Bob didn't put his little niggers in the field till they big enough to work, and the mammies would give time off from the fields to come back to the nursing home to suck the babies. He didn't never put the niggers out in bad weather. He'd give us something to do in out the weather, like shelling corn, and the women would spin and knit. They made us plenty of good clothes. In summer we wore long shirts, split up the sides, made out of loins. That's same as cotton sacks was made out of. In winter we had good jeans and knitted sweaters and knitted socks. My pa was a shoemaker. He'd take a calf hide and make shoes with the hairy sides turned in, and they was warm and kept your feet dry. My ma spent a lot of time carding and spinning wool, and I always had plenty things. Life was pretty fine with Marse Bob. He was a man of plenty. He had a lot of land, and he built him a log house when he came to Texas. He had several hundred heads of cattle and more than that many hogs. We raised cotton and grain and chickens and vegetables and most anything anybody could ask for. Some places the masters give out a peck a meal and so many pounds of meat so a family for them a week's ration. And if they ate it up, they was all they got. But Marse Bob always give plenty. Said, if you need more, you can have it, 'cause ain't any going to suffer on my place. He built us a church, and old man Kenneth Lyons, who was a slave of the Lyons family nearby, used to get a pass every Sunday morning to come preach to us. He was a man of good learning, and the best preacher I ever heard. He baptized in a little old mud hole down back of our place. Nearly all the boys and gals gets converted when they about 12 or 15 years old. Then on Sunday afternoon, Marse Bob learned us to read and write. He told us we ought to get all the learning we could. Once a week, the slaves could have any night they want for a dance or frolic. Nance McQueen was a slave belonging on the Dewberry place that could play a fiddle, and his master give him a pass to come play for us. Marse Bob give us chicken, or kilt of fresh beef, or let us make 'lasses candy. We could choose any night 'cept in the fall of the year. Then we worked awful hard and didn't have the time. We had a gin run by horsepower, and after sundown, when we left the fields, we used to gin a bale of cotton every night. Marse always give us from Christmas Eve through New Year's Day off to make up for the hard work in the fall. Christmas time, everybody got a present, and Marse Bob give a big hog to every 4 families. We had money to buy whiskey with. In spare time, we'd make corn-shuck horse collars and all kinds of baskets, and Marse bought them off us. What he couldn't use, he sold for us. We'd take a post oak and split it thin with drawing knives and let it get tough in the sun, and then weave it into cotton baskets and fishing baskets and little fancy baskets. The men spent their money on whiskey 'cause everything else was furnished. We raised our own tobacco and hung it in the barn in season, and anybody could go get it when they wanted it. We always got Saturday afternoons off to fish and hunt. We used to have fish fries and plenty of game in them days. Course, we used to hear about other places where they had nigger drivers and beat the slaves, but I never did see or hear tell of one of master's slaves getting a beating. We had an overseer, but didn't know what a nigger driver was. Marse Bob had some nigger dogs like other places and used to train them for fun. He'd get some of the boys to run for an hour or so and then put the dogs on the trail. He'd say, if you hear them getting near, take to a tree. But Marse Bob never had no niggers to run off. Old man Briscoe, who had a place next to ours, was vicious cruel. He was mean to his own blood, beating his children. His slaves was afeared all the time and hated him. Old Charlie, a good old man who belonged to him, run away and stayed 6 months in the woods before Briscoe cotched him. The niggers used to help feed him, but one day a nigger trayed him, and Briscoe put the dogs on him and cotched him. He made to Charlie like he wasn't going to hurt him none and got him to come peaceful. When he got him home, he tied him and beat him for a terrible long time. Then he took a big pine torch and let burning pitch drop in spots all over him. Old Charlie was sick about 4 months, and then he died. Marse Bob knowed me better'n most of the slaves 'cause I was round the house more. One day he called all the slaves to the yard. He only had 66 then 'cause he divided with his son and daughter when they married. He made a little speech. He said, I'm going to a war, but I don't think I'll be gone long, and I'm turning the overseer off and leaving Andrew in charge of the place, and I wants everything to go on just like I was here. Now, you all mind what Andrew says, 'cause if you don't, I'll make it rough on you when I come back home. He was joking, though, 'cause he wouldn't have done nothing to him. Then he said to me, Andrew, you is old enough to be a man and look after things, take care of missus, and see that none of the niggers wants, and try to keep the place going. We didn't know what the war was about, but master was gone 4 years. When old missus heard from him, she called all the slaves and tell us the news and read us his letters. Little parts of it she wouldn't read. We never heard of him getting hurt none, but if he had, old missus wouldn't tell us, 'cause the niggers used to cry and pray over him all the time. We never heard tell what the war was about. When Marse Bob came home, he sent for all the slaves. He was sitting in a yard chair all tuckered out, and shook hands all round, and said he's glad to see us. Then he said, I got something to tell you. You is just as free as I is. You don't belong to nobody but yourselves. We went to war and fought, but the Yankees done whoop us, and they say the niggers is free. You can go where you want to go, and you can stay here just as you like. He couldn't help but cry. The niggers cry and don't know much what Marse Bob means. They is sorry about the freedom, 'cause they don't know where to go, and they's always pinned on old Marse to look after them. 3 families went to get farms by themselves, but the rest just stay on for hands on the old place. The Federals had been coming by even before old Marse come home. They all come back carrying their little budgets, and if they was walking, they'd look in the stables for a horse or mule, and they just took what they wanted of corn or livestock. They done the same after Marse come back home. He just say let 'em go their way, 'cause that's what they going to do anyway. We was scared of them than we was of the devil. But they spoke right kindly to us colored folks. They said, if you got a good master and want to stay, well, you can do that. But now you can go where you want to, 'cause ain't nobody going to stop you. The niggers couldn't hardly get used to the idea. When they wants to leave the place, they still go up to the big house for a pass. They just can't understand about the freedom. Old Marse and Missus say, you don't need no pass. All you got to do is just take your foot in your hand and go. It seems like the war plumb broke old Marse up. It wasn't long till he moved into Tyler and left my pa running the farm on halfance with him and the nigger workers. He didn't live long, but I forgets just how long. But when Mr. Bob aired the old place, he 'lowed he'd just go 'long the way his pa had made the trade with my pa. Young Mr. Bob apparently done the first rascally I'd ever heard of a Goodman doing. The first year we worked for him, he raised lots of grain and other things and 57 bales of cotton. Cotton was 52 cents a pound, and he shipped it all away, but all he ever give us was a box of candy and a sack of store tobacco and a sack of sugar. He said the sign mint done got lost. Pa said to let it go, 'cause we had always lived by what the Goodmans had said. I got married and lived on the old place till I was in my late 50s. I had 7 children, but if I got any living now, I don't know where they is. My pa and ma got to own a little piece of land not far from the old place, and pa lived to be 102 and ma 106. I'm the last one of any of my folks.